Israel eliminated a senior Hezbollah commander in southern Lebanon, and U.S. President Biden faces increasing calls from his own staff to demand a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. What's going on, everyone? Let's take a look at some updates as it relates to the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. I'm recording this at 9 a.m. Central on Monday, January 8th, 2024. Overnight, information came out that Wissam al-Tawil, the deputy head of a unit in the Radwan force of Hezbollah, was eliminated in an airstrike in southern Lebanon. This is the senior-most commander in Hezbollah that's been killed during the ongoing engagements between the IDF and Hezbollah that really started on October 8th. At least this iteration began on October 8th. The Radwan Force, as a little bit of a background here, is a Hezbollah special operations unit focused on infiltrating Israeli territory and attacking targets in the northern portion of the country. This specific unit was stood up around 2008 and has picked up pretty significant combat experience, having been deployed multiple times to Syria during the ongoing civil war there. Additionally, there's estimated to be around 2,500 members in the Radwan force that are broken out into squad-size elements that are able to operate relatively independently. Now, Tawil's death has been confirmed by Hezbollah, but we haven't seen anything specific to this strike claimed by Israel quite yet. Every day, Israel is carrying out strikes against Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon, so that's not out of the ordinary, at all. But there's a little bit of question as to whether or not Tawil was actually targeted here. There's a good roll-up that I'm going to run through, put together by Yaakov Katz, who said there's three real scenarios to look at here. He said, one, Tawil was on his way to conduct an attack, so this was essentially a preemptive strike, defensive in nature of sorts, which is kind of standard for how the fighting has been on the northern front so far. Hezbollah is launching attacks into Israeli territory every day. Regularly throughout the day, Israel is either striking those launch points or striking those Hezbollah members as they move forward to conduct those attacks. It's possible Tawil got caught up in all of that. The second scenario here is that Israel did not know that Tawil was in the car and thought they were just carrying out a strike against Hezbollah's lower-level operatives, which isn't crazy because they've been doing that nonstop. So imagine a scenario where this vehicle is approaching or departing from a known rocket or mortar launch location. Israel spots it either before or after an attack. They carry out a strike just like they have multiple times every day for weeks, even months now, and they just find out after the fact that it wasn't just two lower-level operatives, but a senior Hezbollah commander that was actually in the car at that time. Additionally, Israel hasn't really targeted Hezbollah leadership quite yet. If you look at all of it's over 150 Hezbollah militants so far killed on the northern front. For the most part, low-level fighters, right? Not very many leaders, nobody to the level of Tawil, that's for sure. And then the last one here kind of put forward is that this is just to clear the path for an eventual large-scale war against, or large-scale military operation against Hezbollah. Because one way to prepare the battlefield ahead of an operation is to eliminate key commanders, key leaders of the opposing force. We've talked about that a little bit before, how there's some posturing inside of Israel kind of setting the stage for what could be a strike, a larger operation against Hezbollah. This could be viewed in that context. But again, each one of those three or anything else would just be complete speculation at this point. Still waiting on really any information from Israel related to this strike. The war in Gaza hasn't really changed the official stance of the U.S. government as it relates to Israel and Palestine, at all. I mean, you can point to some changing language from time to time, but for the most part, if you're looking at actions, like what is actually being done or not being done, little to nothing has changed since October 7th or before. But that could change. We've got some events coming up in the near future that could impact that, namely a U.S. presidential election. So this past week, an anonymous group of staffers that are working on the Biden re-election campaign published a letter talking about their frustrations with how the Biden administration has handled the war in Gaza. They said, quote, "We joined this campaign because the values that you and we share are the ones worth fighting for. However, your administration's response to Israel's indiscriminate bombing in Gaza has been fundamentally antithetical to those values." They're using that term, indiscriminate bombing. It's not out of nowhere. They're using it because President Biden used that term to describe Israel's actions in Gaza just a few weeks ago. They called for President Biden and his administration to take 5 steps. 1, publicly call for and use financial and diplomatic leverage to bring about an immediate, permanent ceasefire. 2, advocate for de-escalation in the region, including demanding that Hamas release all hostages and that Israel release over 2,000 Palestinians in administrative detention being held without charge. 3, end unconditional military aid to Israel. 4, investigate whether Israel's actions in Gaza violate the Leahy Law, prohibiting U.S. military aid from funding foreign military units implicated in the commission of gross violations of human rights. 5, take concrete steps to end the conditions of apartheid, occupation, and ethnic cleansing that are the root causes of this conflict. They wrap up by saying, only with an end to violence can we achieve a real and lasting peace that upholds the right to self-determination, safety, and freedom for Palestinians and Israelis alike. So a pretty notable letter there from inside of the Biden team, albeit his re-election campaign rather than the current administration, so there are some differences. Worth noting that historically, foreign policy, foreign affairs have not played a major role in U.S. presidential elections. I am hearing some folks say that this time is different, that the images and the videos coming out of Gaza have struck a chord with so many people that stopping that war, demanding a ceasefire, or stopping military aid to Israel, some combination of all of that is a priority for a lot of voters. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see as this election cycle plays out. Yesterday, we talked about 2 Palestinian journalists that were killed in an Israeli airstrike in southern Gaza, one of whom was Hamza Dadu, the son of the Gaza bureau chief for Al Jazeera, who's already lost quite a few family members since the war began. Hamza has developed a significant social media following, over 1 million followers on Instagram, has really kind of served as a voice for a lot of people around the world to better understand what's going on inside of Gaza. So when his death was announced, there were a lot of claims that he was being deliberately targeted. Prominent Palestinian journalist targeted by Israeli forces, if you will. We did not have any information from Israel yesterday regarding that specific strike. Overnight, they did put out a statement. They say that Israeli military aircraft identified and struck a terrorist who operated an aircraft in a way that put IDF forces at risk, a drone operator. They say this pair, that they have now learned are journalists, were traveling in a vehicle with a terror operative who was operating a drone. So the way that Israel is presenting this is that Hamza and Mustafa, the 2 journalists in the car that were killed, were not the target, but the Hamas, or Palestinian Islamic Jihad, operative in the vehicle operating a drone against Israeli forces was the target. The other 2 were collateral damage. So if you want a little glimpse into the information war here, when you read the Al Jazeera reports of this event, they only refer to Hamza and Mustafa being in the car, meaning that these 2 journalists were in the car was struck, therefore the journalists were targeted. Now we have Israel's report saying, yes, those 2, also the Hamas operative that was the actual target. And I'm not sure we're ever going to have concrete evidence one way or the other. Then Hamas put out a roll-up yesterday that I thought was worth getting into. Now, interpret these numbers however you want to, right? But they bring up some things that I think are often glossed over when we're talking about this war. So they say, quote, a daily update for the Israeli ongoing aggression in Gaza, day 94 of the Israeli genocidal war. That's how they're framing the conflict, for reference. They say 70% of homes across Gaza are damaged, with 69,000 totally destroyed. 1.9 million people are displaced. And then they spent a lot of time, this is what I want to get into, on the health sector. They say 30 hospitals are completely out of service, which sounds about right. I mean, if you look at pictures and videos of Gaza, it's hard to imagine very many hospitals and clinics are still fully functioning, right? It's hard enough to do that in the middle of a war zone. Gaza is in rough shape across the board right now. They say around 6,000 people need care that cannot be provided in Gaza and need evacuation. I feel like we missed this in a lot of reports, right? Gaza did not have like the state-of-the-art medical capabilities before this war kicked off. Now they've been under siege with limited equipment, limited electricity, limited fuel, limited resources, limited doctors and nurses. There's a lot of things they can't do at all in Gaza that they probably had a hard time doing before the war kicked off. So what Hamas is saying here is that there's around 6,000 people that require medical attention that cannot be provided in Gaza. And then they say 150,000 patients have chronic diseases that can no longer be adequately treated in Gaza. And again, this is something that I think just flies right under the radar. There's so much focus. And, anytime that Palestinians are killed in direct Israeli military action, that hits the news. You see the names, you see the pictures. That gets the attention, and understandably so. How many people, though, do you think in Gaza have chronic diseases that need treatment daily, weekly, monthly, and they're not getting it right now because the resources aren't there, or the doctor that they would need to see to about this condition is busy treating trauma patients? Because every day there's more people coming in that need immediate life-saving care. Some of these chronic diseases, some of these chronic conditions, they're just not going to get the priority that they need. And over time, those people, some of those people at least, are certainly going to die. And this is something where I feel like there's just not enough conversation around. I mean, think about the tens, hundreds of thousands of people that are very, very sick or injured and need care that cannot be provided in Gaza. We can't do anything about that, like at all. Like the only option is a permanent ceasefire. Really? 2024? I don't know. I don't have the perfect answer there, not by a long shot. If you see a large group of people in a small area that need medical attention that exists in the immediate region, it feels wrong that we can't find a way to resolve that issue. That doesn't mean stop the war. That doesn't mean let Hamas off the hook. But I feel like as a people, the world, we should be able to figure that one out. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in national security subjects, be sure to check out the sit reps I put out on Substack. Link is in the description below. Substack now also has ad-free, sponsor-free videos that go live about 1 hour before they're up on YouTube. But thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.